Greetings. Ken Woodward here. Welcome back to another episode of Curated Questions. Together, we engage inquisitive humans about how they use questions to navigate and make sense of our world. I am a fellow traveler and pilgrim on this journey, and I'm glad you're here. Here is the sentence that started it. We were on a weekly call, the five of us, and one of the guys said something almost in passing. He said that over the last couple of years, he had gotten better at asking questions, and then he added more detail. He said it was because of this group, and then he just moved on like it was nothing. Wait, what? I wrote it down. I gotta hear more. Somebody telling me he has learned to ask better questions. That is one kind of interesting. Somebody telling me he used to be afraid to ask them at all. That is something else. And I knew that second thing. Not from watching it in another person, but from living it inside myself for a long time, in rooms that had nothing to do with this group. I asked for a follow-up discussion to learn more. The next day, the two of us had a half-hour call, just to dig in, just to pull the thread and see what came with it. For this episode, we agreed to call him Ian. The choosing of the name is his. The story is his. I'm only carrying it for a little while. This episode is about the fear of asking a question, where it comes from, why it makes a lot more sense than we usually give it credit for, and what it takes for that fear to finally lift. This is not about fixing Ian. Ian is doing his own work and doing it well, and it happens way outside the frame of this recording. What we are going to do is to stand next to one true thing he showed me and turn it over slowly and look at what is underneath it. Let us start where it started, at home. When I asked Ian why he held his questions, the first thing he talked about was his parents. His mom, he said, did not really have the capacity for the deeper conversations. Not that she refused them, she just did not have the room for them. His dad would talk about a thing directly, get to the practical end of it, and stop. There was a wall, and Ian learned where it stood, the way a kid always does. You do not go testing the wall in a house like that. You learn where it is, and you keep your back to it. He told me his folks were shaped by the Depression, a scarcity mindset, he called it. And that word, scarcity, is where this whole thing breaks open for me. Because there is a book by that name, by Sendal Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir. And the thing they found is that scarcity is not just a fact about your bank account. It is a fact about your mind. When you do not have enough of something, the lack itself takes over. It sits at the front of your attention, and it quietly drains the rest of you. It does two things in particular that matter here. It makes you tunnel, narrowing down hard onto what is right in front of you, letting everything off to the side fall out of view, and it pulls you into right now, away from later. Put a question up against that. A question is the opposite of a tunnel. It reaches off to the side, toward what is not urgent, toward what you do not even know yet. It is a thing you spend now for something you might understand later. A mind running on empty cannot afford that. So in Ian's house, a question was not a curiosity. It was a luxury. It was the family spending attention they did not have on something that would not feed anyone tonight. So Ian's dad going straight to the end of a subject and stopping was not him being cold. He was tunneling. He was living the only way a world that's short on slack will let you live. Here's what ties it together for me. The same pattern shows up no matter what you are short on. Money, time, food, people. The mind does the same thing with all of it. So Ian's mom having no room for depth and the house having no room for money were never two different inheritances. They were one thing wearing two coats, Depth is the very first thing a tired, stretched mind lets go of. She was not a cold woman. She was a woman with nothing left over. So Ian did not grow up learning that questions were against the rules. He grew up learning that lessons were expensive. That is a quieter lesson. It also lasts a lot longer. Now, there is a second scarcity under that first one, and this one belongs to all of us, not just to Ian. We are built to need each other. That is not a soft feeling. It is older than that and harder wired. For almost the whole length of our history, getting cut off from the group meant death. So we carry a body that treats the threat of being pushed out as a threat to life. And it's not a figure of speech. Put somebody in a brain scanner and leave them out of a simple game. Just exclude them. And the part of the brain that lights up is the same part that handles physical pain. So when we say a rejection hurts, we are not being poetic. We are describing the wiring exactly. It runs on the pain line. So picture Ian standing at the edge of a question. His sense of belonging is telling him the stakes are survival. The pain system is making that warning physical, an actual alarm going off in the body. And the scarcity of that particular house has set the alarm to a hair trigger and priced his particular questions clean out of reach. None of that is a flaw in the man. Every piece of it is a system doing exactly the job it was built to do. He was not broken. He was reading the room correctly. The room was just the wrong room decades ago, and he never got told the reading could change. Sit with two questions before we move on. If you are someone who builds rooms where people gather, ask what each person is hauling in the door before you have said a single word, and ask what your room might be quietly telling them about whether it is safe to go deep here or if it's too expensive. And if you are someone walking into those rooms, ask what a question costs in the house that raised you. Then ask whether you are still paying that same price today in rooms where the price has actually changed. There were two fears, and they're not the same animal. So let us take them one at a time. The first one was that asking would intrude, that a question might be too much, might overstep, be too invasive, or bother someone. This is the common one, and it has a reassuring answer. The fear is mostly backward. We think asking will make us look nosy or needy or like we do not know what we're doing. And when people study what actually happens, it comes out the other way around. The sensitive question, asked with a little care, usually pulls people closer rather than pushing them away. And asking for help, which we are sure will make us look incompetent, tends to make the other person think more of us, not less. So if that were Ian's whole fear, this would be a short episode. The cost he was dreading is mostly in his head. But that was not his real fear. His real fear was the second one. He was fine asking. What he could not stand was getting asked back. Ask one, he felt, and you owe one. Open up a question, and you have opened up yourself. And this is what I most want you to hear. He was right. That's not him being skittish. When one person opens up, the other feels the pull to open up to the same depth. That is just how it works between people. Ask one, owe one. He had that read dead on. Now, add the piece that makes it land. A question is already a way of opening up. When you ask something, you show where your attention goes. You show what you do not know, which you are curious enough to chase. So asking does not only risk a question coming back to you, Asking is already you being seen. Ian's instinct was tracking something real. The door does swing both ways because asking is already half of opening it. So his silence was not him being timid, it was him doing the math and getting the math right. As a guy whose alarm was set early and whose questions had always cost too much. Seth Godin, who wrote This is Marketing and has been on this podcast, gives us a clear way to see what Ian was actually protecting. Godin says almost everything we do comes down to where we stand with the people around us, and that we chase that in two directions. One is up and down, who is above me, who is below me. The other is side to side, who is next to me, who here knows me. One says, basically, I am better. The other says, I am one of you. And underneath both of them, the simplest line in the book, we are lonely. We want to be seen and known. Lay that over Ian's two fears, and they fold into one quiet calculation he never knew he was running. The fear of intruding, that one is side to side. He is guarding his spot next to people. But that move has a trap built into it, because being next to somebody asks the question, who here knows me? And you cannot be known if you never open up. So the very thing that he did to protect his place beside people is the thing that kept him a stranger to them. He held the seat and stayed unknown in it. The fear of being probed, that one is up and down. Read it that way, and the person asking is standing above, and the person answering is down below, exposed. Ian went quiet. He pulled back. Asking was not the safer move. Asking was the trigger. The second he asked, the door swung, and now a question was coming back at him. Now he was the one down below and exposed, the thing he could not stand. So he did not ask. Staying out was the only safe place there was. Not above, out. And that is the house again. His dad holding the terms, getting to the end, stopping. Ian learned that a question is a thing that moves you up or down, so he quit picking it up at all. So he stayed quiet. He kept his footing, and he stayed alone. The whole thing correct. The whole thing solving for the wrong problem. One question this time, just one. When you hold a question back, what are you actually protecting? And is that thing still in danger, or is it only in memory? You do not talk a person out of fear. That is accurate. You cannot tell Ian he is wrong, because he's not. The only thing that helps is to change the physics, to build a room where the true thing he is scared of is just no longer true. That is what the group does, and the method undergirding it comes mostly from Brian Fretwell, who runs a company called Finding Good and has also been a podcast guest. Brian flips the usual thing on its head. Instead of circling what went wrong and telling ourselves we will learn from our mistakes, he has us learn from what went right. And he is careful here, which I appreciate. This is not the cheap, everything is great kind of positivity. It is real attention to the thing a person actually did well, often without even noticing they did it. He talks about how the brain wants to add value. He uses this image of finding blueberries, the little good things a person picks up throughout the day that are worth handing to somebody else. And he names the exact thing that matters for Ian. Something different happens when another human being is the one asking you the question. So here is how the room actually works. Every week, same opening. The calendar invite just says, what went well? That's it. It's not a tricky question. It's not trying to be clever. It is plain, and it works. And honestly, the plainness is part of why it works. We go around the circle. Each of us gets asked. Each of us answers. And then whoever is asking follows their own curiosity wherever the answer goes. Look what that does to Ian's fear. It takes it apart in 3 different places. First, the rotation takes the cost out of asking. Ian's whole defense ran on that one link. Ask one, owe one. But in this room, everybody gets asked, every week, no matter what. Being asked is not something your question sets off. It's just the shape of the hour. In this room, being asked is not something you cause. It is something you count on. And once that is true, asking is free. The thing he was guarding against is no longer a consequence. It's just the room. Second, the opening question makes getting asked safe. The door that swings open does not lead to a probe. It leads to a witness. If we opened every week with, "So, what are you struggling with?" Ian is gone by the second meeting. But we open on, "What went well?" So being asked stops meaning being found out and starts meaning being seen at your best. That is survivable, more than survivable. It's the thing he was quietly starving for. Third, and this is the one that keeps the whole thing honest. The question bends for the hard week, because some weeks, nothing goes well. And a weaker room would either force a win that is not there, or quietly ditch the format and let the bad week turn into the exact probe everybody was afraid of. We do not do either. On a rough week, the question just becomes, what sucked the least? And that is not a softer version of the same question. It is a different move. It refuses to let the answer be nothing. It says, there is always a least bad thing. And the least bad thing is real. And it counts. Getting out of bed on the morning you had already decided not to, that week, that is the win. And the question is built to know it. The bar comes down to find the person. The witness does not move. There is a kind of grace in that, and I'll let it stay quiet instead of preaching it. You do not earn your seat with a good week. You just find the least dark corner and point. Anybody can do that on any week, which means no week kicks you out of the circle. And there's one more thing built in, and it might be the most important one of all. Even on a week where Ian has nothing to show, he knows he's going to be the one asking somebody else. He is never only the guy who might get exposed. He always has the other chair. He gets to be the one who finds the blueberries, who hears the wind, who does the witnessing. And that, right there, answers the scarcity house directly. In that house, your place had to be earned, and depth got rationed. And a bad week left you with nothing to give and nowhere safe to stand. In this room, a bad week takes nothing from your job because your job is to pay attention to somebody else's good, and that never runs out. You belong by giving, and there is always something to give, which is older than it sounds. There's an anthropologist named Polly Weissner who spent something like 40 years with the Chauncey people in the Kalahari, and she did this simple, beautiful thing. She compared how people talked during the day with how they talked at night around the fire. During the day, the talk was practical, where the food is, what needs doing, and a lot of complaining, a lot of criticism. But at night, around the fire, it changed completely. Most of it turned into stories. The complaining nearly disappeared. People told the day back to each other, the hunts and the getting lost and the small dramas, and the telling itself is what pulled them together. And her point is that For almost the entire length of us becoming us, this is how we lived. Ian did not grow up around a fire. He grew up in a daylight that never ended. All foraging, all practical, all get to the end and stop. No night, no circle. What Brian's method builds, and what we do every week, is just a walk back to the fire. We set down the daytime mode, the getting and the controlling and the narrowing, and we step into the other one, where the week becomes a story, and the story gets witnessed, and the telling is what holds the circle together. The campfire is right there on Brian's own site as a framework. Weisner gives us the proof that it is not something we invented. It is something we remembered. Ian's house has just let the fire go out. The group lights it again. 2 questions, and I'll skip the setup this time. You know who you are. What does the first question in your room open onto? And what does that teach people to expect from you? And on a week when you have nothing to show, what could you still give the circle anyway? Everything so far has been about Ian getting asked. But the real change is what happens when he turns around and becomes the one doing the asking. And this is where the whole thing pays off. There is research on this, and it's about as clear as research gets. The people who ask more questions, and especially the people who ask the follow-up, the second question, the one that says, I'm still here, keep going, those people get liked more. Not less, more. The follow-up tells the other person you are actually listening, that you understood, that you cared enough to go further. And the people on the other end of that wanted more of the person who gave it to them. And there is a sting in it, and it's in Ian's sting, and it's in mine, and probably yours. We do not see it coming. Almost nobody does. We are so sure asking will cost us that we hold back and we ask too little. All of us. And we never find out that the thing we were avoiding was the door the whole time. Put that next to everything Ian was afraid of. He held his questions to protect his standing, to keep from getting knocked down a rung. And it turns out the thing he was avoiding is the exact thing that gets him what he actually wanted, which was never to be above anybody. He wanted to be next to them. He wanted to be known. Think about that actual moment. He leans in and asks one more question, the follow-up. And that is the precise second the other person thinks, oh, this guy gets me. That moment, the one he keeps skipping, that was the one that would give him everything he was after. And look at the order that the room teaches it in, because the order is the whole genius of the thing. Ian does not start by asking. He starts by getting asked and getting witnessed at his best on terms we have already made safe. Only then does he take the other chair. So by the time he asks, he is not reaching into the dark. He already knows from the inside exactly what a good question does to the person who catches it, because it was just done to him. That memory is what tells him it is safe to give it away. You cannot ask well until you have been asked well. The room makes him the answerer first and the asker second. He gets, and then he gives. And watch what that does to his oldest fear. The dread was reciprocity. Ask one, owe one. But in this room, the owing already happened, the safe way, first. He has already been asked. The exposure he was scared of is behind him now, and it turned out to be a gift. So when he finally asks, there's no debt sitting on the other side of it. The thing he owed is already paid, and paid gladly. Asking is not the thing that exposes him anymore. It's just him handing somebody else what he already got. Here's the line I've been walking towards this whole time. Ian thought a question was a way to find out who was above him and who was below him. The fire taught him it was a way to find out who is beside him. And the deepest part for me is this. Ian was right from the very start. He told me in that half hour that questions are a trust-building thing. That was his read the whole time. Formed in a house where trust was scarce, which is exactly why the questions were too expensive to spend. The group never corrected that belief. It proved it. Questions do build trust. He was right all along. The only thing that changed is that he finally stands in a place where the trust comes back, where he can spend the questions he always believed in and watch them come home with more than he sent out. The guy who could not afford a single question has turned into a guy who hands them out, and he gets loved for it. Exactly the way the research promises. Exactly the way he never let himself expect. Let me step out from behind the recorder for a minute. When Ian said it, it rang true in me before I could explain why. That is how I knew it was worth chasing. My house was not his house. The locked door was the same one, though. I held my questions, too, for a long time, because I did not feel the trust. The difference is that somewhere along the line, I started asking anyway, because the question was the right one and it needed asking. And I want to be honest about what that took. I could only do it after building up a kind of callus against the missing trust. I learned to ask into ground that had not earned it. It's a hard way to learn. It leaves a mark. This group has been a good room for me, a kind one, a place to keep the muscle warm. But I came to it having already done most of the hard part in colder places on my own. So I'm not standing above Ian here. I'm not standing above you either. I'm only one of 5 people who found a room that holds them and picked up something inside it worth passing along. And there's one more thing I have to be careful about, and I want to say it out loud. Our time together has been me telling you Ian's story while Ian is not in the room. There is a tension in that. On an episode about a man learning to be drawn out at his own pace. So I've tried not to draw him 1 inch further than he chose to come. He is still doing his work, out past the edge of this recording, on his own clock, and he's really good. One quiet thing, and then we'll wrap up this session. Some of the people who could not ask us anything are already gone. Gone before any of this understanding showed up. Ian carries some of that. I carry some of it. The work of making peace with them keeps going without them in the room. I'm not going to tie a bow on that here. I just did not want to pretend the door closed clean for everybody, because it did not. So if you're listening from inside a room that is never going to be safe, here's the one thing I've got for you. You do not have to grow this muscle where it is dangerous. Find a room that will hold you. And if you cannot find one, build one, a small one. 2 people and 1 honest question is enough to start. Grow the strength where it is safe to grow. I cannot promise you that it carries all the way into the cold rooms. I do not know that yet, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I would rather that we find that out together, with the muscle already built, that asks you to be brave in the one place where bravery should never have been the price of admission. So I will leave you where Ian's story leaves me, with a question I do not have the answer to, one I think belongs to all of us. When the room is never going to be safe, and the question still needs asking, where do we find what it takes to ask anyway?